It's a pleasure to see all of you tonight. Happy for the opportunity we have to study together again from the book of Proverbs. I think this will be the final lesson in this series that we've had for several months on Sunday evenings, looking at different topics that are discussed in the book of wisdom in the book of Proverbs. Help us to serve the Lord and to have practical wisdom as well as we lead our life. And one important area of everybody's life is our finances and the use of money. It's one of the most important tools that we have in order to take care of our needs in this life and to support the Lord's cause. Of course, we've had a lot of talk about the needs for relocating in a new building and being able to support that work as well. And all of it comes back to how each one of us is able to manage our own affairs and our own money and budgets so that we might be able to do those things that are most essential to get done. And I think all of the principles that are set forth in the book of Proverbs about money is helpful to me and to all men as we think about, what we're going to do with the material blessings that we have in life. I think Caleb did an excellent job of picking out songs to complement the lesson in that we always need, in studying and thinking about finances and material wealth, to remember what our priorities are. And that is what Jesus commanded us and taught us in the Sermon on the Mount, that we should lay up our treasure in heaven and keep our heart focused there, because that is the reliable inheritance and reward that all of us need to lay hold of when this life is over. It needs to be the number one priority. Material things are only temporary. Material wealth is very unstable, and it won't last very long until we'll all leave it behind. So as we study these things, this is a necessary tools that we need to use in the proper way while we're in this physical world in order to do the Lord's will and to take care of our duties, but it's not the main priority of life. In Proverbs 23, verses 4 and 5, do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it. When you set your eye on it, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies towards the heavens. So we can see that if you, as many people do in surveys coming out of college and so on, their goal is to get rich and to make a lot of money. Says you should stop making that your main focus in life. That is something that is going to be a disappointment to you in the end. And many times, even when you do lay up wealth, it flies away. It has a way of being either taken away by foreigners or financial reverses that happen to the economy, or it can be taken away from all of us when we die. So it's not going to be around long. And so we should set our eyes on spiritual things. That's the priority and number one goal of life, and the thing that takes precedence over everything else. In Proverbs 27:24, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. A person may have physical riches, but they're not going to last. Usually they don't always last even through your own lifetime, but they certainly don't last beyond this life as far as having any good for the soul. And even rewards and crowns that are given in cities and different temporary rulers, those things don't last either. In 1 Timothy 6 and verse 7, we can see that the New Testament revelation is in harmony with this as well. Paul said, for we have brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of it either. So certainly we should give up the love of money as a priority in life and learn to be content with the things that we have. Godliness along with contentment is indeed great gain. Money doesn't satisfy or bring happiness or stability, we're told in other of the poetic books of the Old Testament. In Ecclesiastes 5:10, Solomon says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with his income. This too is vanity. Those that are avarice and set their heart on loving money, they are never going to have enough to bring satisfaction to the soul. In Psalms 52 and verses 5 through 7, but God will break you down forever. He will snatch you up and tear you away from your tent and uproot you from the land of the living. And the righteous will see and fear and will laugh at him, saying, behold, a man who would not make God his refuge, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and was strong in his evil desires. So someday God is going to uproot the wicked that aren't rich toward God, like the rich fool. And then what will they do? There'll be a source of mocking to all of those that are righteous, that put God first. They're going to be one that's going to be a moral lesson about how things shouldn't be done. So we don't want to be in the category of those evil men. Money and finances are something that we know can be harmful to our soul. So we have to handle the things that we receive in this life with prayerful concern and care, that we don't allow our heart to be carried away with the love of money. In Proverbs 30 and verses 7 through 9, a wise man said, two things I ask of thee. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep deception and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, lest I be full and deny thee, and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. So Augur was a wise man who some of his proverbs are included in the book, and he recognized that being right with God is the great priority. And so he needed to be sure that he wasn't deceived by falsehoods and deceptions, but that he understood the truth. And he needed to be one that didn't have too much money. He thought that would be a temptation to cause him to not depend upon God, not think he needed God. He would say, who is God that I need him? Or that he would not fall into poverty, where he would be tempted to steal and do unlawful things in order to obtain the things that he needed, and profane God because things were going bad in his life, as some people do. So certainly money is something we have to be on great guard against, not to let it get in the way of the number one priority of serving God and getting to heaven. It can prevent us from turning to Christ. It's hard for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven because he depends on his money rather than the grace and help of God that's needed to get out of sin and to make your life stable. And it can also stifle one's spiritual growth when income increases and material possessions increase. Many times people get distracted from their goals and their soul begins to grow weak because they get cut off from spiritual food and priorities. One thing about wealth that we have under the sun is we need to make sure that we earn it in an honest way. It's not right to have things, but we need to make sure that the way that we obtain them is honestly. In Proverbs 15, verse 27, he who profits illicitly troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. So we need to be a person, we don't want any illegal gain. We don't want any unlawful money that's going to stain our hands. We hate it because we know what it'll do to our soul if we get money in an unlawful way that separates us from God, that causes us to be in fear of the law of the land. It'll trouble our house. It'll ruin our family. We know with Achan that he took that money there in Jericho that was under the ban and put it in his tent, and it ruined his whole family, and not only himself. The same thing happened to the enemies of Daniel that tried to accuse him before the king of praying to someone other than the king, and had that whole wicked scheme to have him thrown in the lion's den. We know in the end they were thrown in the lion's den because of their desire for getting a position through illicit means. In Proverbs 10, verse 9, he who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his way will be found out. You want to have stability in your life and not have to look over your shoulder or fear the IRS or what they might do to you, or different people that you've swindled. You don't want the face of God turned against you, conduct yourself with money in an honest way so that you can live securely and not be afraid like the perverted man that's going to have to fear the day he's going to be found out for his illicit gain. Proverbs 11:1, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Here's a person carrying on free enterprise and selling grain or selling some other product that you have to weigh out, like these ancient scales show they had different weights and measures that they would use to conduct business. If someone is dishonest in the way he treats his fellow man and his neighbor, God considers that disgusting, an abomination in his sight, something that certainly brings God's wrath upon you. But if you're an honest man, God is delighted in you, that you show respect for his will and for the good of your neighbor. Diligent work is the way in which we are to earn a living. And the New Testament teaches us that we ought to work with our hands doing that which is good in Proverbs chapter 4, or Ephesians chapter 4. And the book of Proverbs teaches the same principle. In Proverbs 10 and verses 4 and 5, poor is he who works with a negligent hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a son who acts wisely, but he who sleeps in the harvest is a son who acts shamefully. The number one key to financial success and having the things that you need for your family and for your future financially is to work hard. That's a key that a lot of people don't want to pay attention to, but it's written all over the pages of history and in the lives of men that are successful. They work hard. That's the key. That's the secret ingredient that everybody's looking for on how to be successful, is they work with a diligent hand, and it makes them rich. They're able to be industrious and put forth the effort necessary to get the job done in a way that other people respect and that they want to be engaged with you in business and buy your products and so on, because you do work carefully in the things that you do. You act wisely, you think ahead, and you gather what's needed for the future. A person that is lazy is not going to be able to have those things. In Proverbs 14:23, in all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. A lot of people can talk a good game about how to make a living or how to make investments or how to come up with inventions, but if it's all talk and no action, it's not going to lead to anything. You have to go out the door and you have to do the work in order for that success to come. As we studied in Proverbs, there's many warnings about laziness, and many people are craving to have more. They're looking for handouts from the government and so on, and their root cause of trouble is that they're lazy. Go to the ant, O sluggard, observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provisions in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you rise up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and your poverty will come like a vagabond, and your need like an armed man. So the ant has wisdom. He knows how to put himself to work without somebody having to be a taskmaster over him, and makes the preparations necessary at the proper time in order to have food when the winter time comes. The sluggard, on the other hand, sleeps when he ought to work. He's always seeking another opportunity to take a nap or to slumber, and as a result, poverty is surely going to come upon him, and need is going to assault him like a wanderer, like an armed man that comes up and takes your property. Laziness, in Proverbs 13 and verse 4, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is made fat. It works the same way in spiritual things as well as material things, that the more work and diligence you put in, the more blessings you're going to be able to take out and enjoy. In Proverbs 19:15, laziness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle man will suffer hunger. Wasting time is a great destroyer of wealth and opportunity. Proverbs 20 and verse 13, do not love sleep lest you become poor. Open your eyes, and you will be satisfied with food. Open your eyes. Get out of bed when it's time to get up. Go to work. Get there on time. Put in the proper time that you're supposed to be there, and you won't be poor. You'll have the things that you need. So get your priorities straight and say no to the fleshly desire to just be lazy. In Proverbs 20 and verse 4, the sluggard does not plow after the autumn. It's too cold outside, so he doesn't want to plow then. Well, if he doesn't prepare his field then, what's he going to have in the future? So he begs during the harvest and has nothing. In Proverbs 31:24, he makes linen garments. She does, that virtuous woman, and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. She puts in that extra time and work and doesn't just waste her time, and is able then to have the things that her family needs, and even the fine things of life. We're told that one way, certainly, to guard our wealth and to be successful in life is to take care of the property that we are able to acquire and be blessed with. If you don't maintain your car, it's not going to last. If you don't maintain your clothes, if you don't maintain your shoes, they're not going to last as long. You can put a lot of money into some work boots, but if you don't ever polish them or clean them up, they're not going to last. If you put them away wet or whatever, they're going to rot, right? So one way in which a lot of money gets wasted, a lot of resources that could be used for some good, because we don't take care of the things that we have. I passed by the field of the sluggard and by the vineyard of the man lacking sense, and behold, it was completely overgrown with thistles. Its surface was covered with needles, and its stone wall was broken down. When I saw, I reflected upon it. I looked, and I received instruction, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Then your poverty will come like a robber, and your want like an armed man. So we can all see what happens when you don't paint your house, you don't paint your fence, you don't take care of your yard. Eventually it's ruined and its value goes to pieces. And that's all on us if we're lazy and we don't do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Avoid cosigning is a great warning in the book of Proverbs. It's ruined many people, good and honest people that otherwise were wise in their handling of their funds. I know a man that was loved by our whole family out in California, and he ran a filling station and had a successful business and saved a lot of money, and they could have traveled wherever they wanted to in retirement. He co-signed for one of his grandsons to buy the business. The grandson didn't take care of the business. It went broke. They lost all their retirement money that they loaned to him or co-signed away. The son went on and started another business, but all their retirement money's still gone, right? So what happens when you co-sign? You're responsible for it, and if the other person's irresponsible, you're stuck with it. So the book of Proverbs tells us don't do that. You better think through what you're doing, because they're not responsible for the debt. You're going to be responsible for the debt. It says, my son, if you have become surety for your neighbor and have given a pledge for a stranger, if you have been snared with the words of your mouth and have been caught with the words of your mouth, do this then, my son, and deliver yourself, since you have come into the hands of your neighbor. Go humble yourself and importune your neighbor. You better get out of this deal. Get your name off of that loan, because you're going to be the one holding the bag if he doesn't do his duty. In Proverbs 11 and verse 15, he who is surety for a stranger will surely suffer for it, but he who hates going surety is safe. Proverbs 17:18, a man lacking in sense pledges and becomes surety in the presence of his neighbor. In Proverbs 22:26 and 27, do not be among those who give pledges, among those who become surety for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take your bed from under you? So you can just picture that. You've gone surety, you've taken care of your finances, and now you had to give everything you've got away for somebody else's irresponsibility. And then they even come and demand the bed you're sleeping on, is the picture that's given. You think maybe Solomon thought that was important? He put it in there that many times, that he'd seen enough people's lives ruined by lack of wisdom. If you want to help somebody, just give them some help, but don't mortgage your future for them. And we need to be on guard against such foolishness. It happens all the time. It goes on all the time. And it doesn't seem like you're really signing away that much, but it could end up ruining your future. Do not try to get rich quick. So often this is the cause of people getting into trouble and wrecking their faith, ruining their reputation. I know of preachers and different people in the church that have come up with some kind of scheme in real estate or whatever and got a lot of brethren to invest in it, and they were going to make a killing, and then boom, it didn't work out. And then everybody is upset with everybody, and people's finances are ruined. It says you got to watch out for these get-rich-quick ideas. In Proverbs 28 and verse 20, a faithful man will abound with blessings, but he who makes haste to be rich will not go unpunished. You're going to try to cut corners and get the easy buck and all of that kind of thing, that better be on guard. And we all know about those things that sound too good to be true, and they usually aren't. And that's the way it works in life most times. And you don't go unpunished. You're a faithful man. You take care of your duties each day. You do the responsible things. That person is going to be blessed. In Proverbs 20 and verse 21, an inheritance gained hurriedly at the beginning will not be blessed in the end. Somebody gets things that they really haven't worked for. How many times do they have a lack of appreciation for it? They're not careful with it. They squander it, and in the end, they don't have it. The prodigal son, that whole parable is based upon that idea. He got his inheritance early. He went away and lost it in loose living, and then he didn't have anything. It'd been a lot better if he was more mature and he got that money later, that he had worked for his father and been faithful. Then he would have been blessed in the end. So don't cut corners. Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to advantage, but everyone who is hasty comes surely to poverty. So, idea of planning things out, being diligent, being disciplined with the things that you have are the surest way to advantage. But when you want to take the shortcuts, it oftentimes leads to illegality, getting involved with shady characters, and it leads to poverty. Proverbs 28:19, he who tills his land will have plenty of food, but he who follows empty pursuits will have poverty and plenty. Instead of doing the hard work necessary to have a crop and have an income, some people, they always want to look for the easy way out and the scheme that takes them off into empty pursuits and waste of time. And they end up in the end with nothing. Avoid impulse buying, we're told in the book of Proverbs. How much is that a cause of trouble for all of us, that we see things and we get the priorities mixed up between what is a need and what is a want, and what's just a plain old desire for something that we really don't need. It's easy to get our priorities out of whack, and Proverbs warns us about that. In Proverbs 21:17, he who loves pleasure will become a poor man, and he who loves wine and oil will not become rich. You're always got to go for the entertainment all the time and spend all of your money and that you should be saving for your future or providing for your business or whatever. It's all about just having a party and having a big time. How are you going to grow your business? How are you going to build up your capital? How are you going to be able to provide for your future? It's all about oil and wine and the luxuries. How are you ever going to be able to build up things for the future? In Proverbs 31:13 through 16, she looked for wool and flax and worked with her hands in delight. She is like a merchant ship. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is still night, and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. She From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. Have a person there that's constantly investing in the family and in the family business and in the family's upbuilding. They're not wasting all of the income on pleasure and on frills, but is building a home and building a house and building a family and building for the future, acting responsibly. Proverbs 31:19, she stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grip the spindle. Busy at work and making things she can make and providing the things herself, and avoiding buying on credit, we're warned about in the scriptures. I guess if Solomon was living in this age, maybe he'd have put a whole lot more proverbs in there about buying with credit cards. And we get them in the mail just about every day. If it's not for me, it's for Caleb or Tabitha or somebody that's getting a credit card offer. They want to get you addicted to go out and get what you want right now. Then you can pay them 20% interest forever to try to keep it. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. That's how the rich stay rich, I guess, is loaning out this money to people at high interest rates and making them their slaves to send them that interest payment every month. You don't have to be a part of that. You can keep your money if you don't go out and buy on credit. If you don't pay that high interest, you can be using that money for something positive, something good. You can be investing in the kingdom of God with all of that money that gets wasted, that goes to credit card interest and other high interests that we get involved with. Become a slave. You cut off yourself from choices that you could have. Proverbs tells us that you have to have a plan in life. It's what it means to be prudent, to be somebody who's circumspect and looks where you're going, is that you have a financial plan. You've got a budget. It's something so important for every young family to learn when you're starting out. You know, there are fundamental problems that happen in marriage, and one of the biggest ones of them all is finances, and not being on the same page with each other about your priorities and about your spending and your impulse buying. That can lead to all kinds of fights and troubles and separation and divorce. So you have to gain control on spending and impulse buying and debt. A budget's a spending plan for effective management and control of money. It's necessary, though it takes time and work away from maybe other pleasurable pursuits that you might be involved in, to determine where your money's going, to where it's being wasted, to where you could be more efficient in laying up for the Lord's cause. We're to give plan. Determine how money's going to be spent and where it's going to go. And then you'll have more of it, and you'll be able to use it more effectively in the way that God wants it used. Proverbs 24:27, prepare your work outside and make it ready for yourself in the field. Afterward, then build your house. First, you get that means of income set up before you go out and get in debt. You make sure you've got the field ready, you got the crops ready, you got all that's necessary to pay for the house when you're going to build it. Shows some preparation, forethought, planning, rather than just run out and get in debt and not have the means and ability to pay for it. You got to have a plan. You got to get the facts before you decide how you're going to spend your money or invest your money or make your money. Every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool displays folly. It takes thought, takes study to direct our money and use this tool in an effective way. In Proverbs 14 and verse 8, the wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. Well, can we see the great error there is there if we're saying, well, I don't understand where all the money went? You're supposed to find out where it went. Get the facts. Well, I don't understand why we can't pay this bill. Well, we didn't plan it out. We didn't think ahead. How come this investment isn't making any money? We need to study about what we're doing with our money, who's taking fees out of our money, so forth. So you list your assets, your liabilities, and understand the current financial situation that's in the world. The prudent man is going to get all the knowledge and facts that he can. You get expert advice in any area of life. We want to get God's advice, and wise Christians and successful people that we know get their advice. We know that advice, it's a cumulative thing as far as building up. Maybe you don't have all the IQ or the experience in every area of life, but there are people that do have it that you can seek out. There are bookstores and books that have been written that are in the library on just about any subject, and certainly the financial section is huge. So without consultations, plans are frustrated, but with many counselors, they succeed. Just like with raising children, it's good to read books about raising children, get good advice from people that have been successful at it. And the same thing is true when it comes to finances. We need to be people that share. God is a God that rules this world. I believe that the Bible teaches that God works in our lives, that His providence rules over this world, that He affects things. He rules above our free will. He rules above our choices, and He makes a difference in our life, and we want God's face shining on us in the things in which we do. And we need to be joyful givers if we want the Lord to be pleased with us and to be on our side in the different endeavors in which we pursue. We don't want Him frowning upon us. He who is gracious to a poor man lends to the Lord, and He will repay him for his good deeds. So when you act with benevolence, even though, on your financial sheet or whatever, you can't see how anything's ever going to rebound to you because you gave to the church to help the gospel get preached, or to have a building built in which the gospel can be taught and saints can gather together. You might not be able to see, well, how's this investment going to come back to me? The Lord's going to make sure it comes back to you. He's the extra factor out there we all have to bear in mind. He has so much control over the things that happen in our lives. It's not what we will, but what does the Lord will? The Lord wills we'll do this or that and we'll make a profit. If He doesn't will it so, we won't. No matter how smart you think you are or how much skill you have in your trade or whatever. Circumstances can happen where you're sick and you can't work. The economy in your particular field gets thrown out of whack and you can't get a job. So the Lord's a big factor in what's going to happen. So we better give and be generous in His cause. Be rich toward Him so that He can bless us. In 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 7, let each one do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly, but under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. We know He is able to make all His grace abound to us when we give to Him and give to His cause. A lack of giving leads to trouble in your life. We have examples when Israel came back out of captivity in the book of Haggai, that the people were not giving as they should, and as a result, there were holes in their pockets, holes in their buckets. They weren't making any headway financially because the Lord would not shine upon them. He wouldn't bless them as long as they put His temple second. They needed to go build His temple and make that a priority. Then God would bless them financially. In Proverbs, you have the same lesson. Honor the Lord with your wealth And from the first of all your produce, God comes first on the budget. He doesn't come last, he comes first. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. Under the old law, God got the first fruits, right? Before you got to use any of the crop, you gave the first part to God. And it is a great example for us on what our priorities. Put the kingdom of heaven first. That's the priority. In Proverbs 11, 24 and 25, there is one who scatters, yet increases all the more. And there is one who withholds what is justly due, but it results only in want. The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered. Isn't that a paradox of life? Here's this stingy individual. He's going to hold his money back from the Lord. He's not going to give liberally to the Lord's cause. And as a result, he's not blessed by God, and he ends up in want. The other person generously puts the Lord first, and he's blessed in his life because he helps the poor. He's benevolent to his brethren. He gives to the cause of the gospel, and the Lord knows how to bless him. He will be watered by the Lord. So don't ever forget God's part in all of these things, and keep your priorities correct. And I'm talking to myself too. I also remember the Lord. Remember what comes first. The kingdom comes first. Well, brethren, I hope these things in Proverbs will be useful to all of us, that we won't soon forget these things and we can keep them fresh in mind. This time we want to extend the Lord's invitation to those that are present. We have a gracious and loving God who's always ready to receive us back into his fellowship when we've gone astray. He is merciful and full of loving kindness. And he is kind to us in order to bring us to repentance. If you're here this evening and your life is not right with the Lord, if your heart hasn't been fixed first upon the love of God and love of Christ, we want to encourage you to get those priorities back straight through repentance and prayer. If you've not obeyed the gospel, we have a great opportunity to assist you in obeying the gospel this evening. He who has believed and has been baptized shall be saved, but he that disbelieves shall be condemned. If you need to respond to the Lord's invitation, won't you come as together we stand and sing?